Now, in regard to what Judge Douglas said in the beginning of his speech about the Compromise of 1850, containing the principle of the Nebraska Bill, although I have often expressed my view upon this subject, yet as I have not done so in this canvass, I will, if you please, detain you a little with them. I have always maintained, so far as I was able, that there was nothing of the principle of the Nebraska Bill in the Compromise of 1850 at all. Nothing whatever. Where can you find the principle of the Nebraska Bill in that compromise? If anywhere, in the two pieces of the compromise organized in the territories of New Mexico and Utah. It was expressly provided in these two acts that when they came to be admitted into the Union, they should be admitted with or without slavery, as they should choose.
That's right.
By their own constitutions.
The will of the people.
Nothing was said in either of those acts. Nothing was said in either of those acts as to what was to be done in relation to slavery during the territorial existence of those territories. While Henry Clay constantly made the declaration, Judge Douglas recognizing him as a leader, that, in this opinion, the old Mexican laws would control that question during the territorial existence, and that these old Mexican laws excluded slavery. Well, how can that be used as a principle for showing that during the territorial existence, as well as at the time of framing the Constitution, the people, if you please, might have slaves if they wanted them? I am not discussing the question whether it is right or wrong, but how are the New Mexico and Utah laws patterns for the Nebraska Bill? I maintain that the organization of Utah and New Mexico did not establish a general principle at all. Had no feature of establishing a general principle. The acts to which I have referred were a part of a general system of compromise. They did not lay down what was proposed as a regular policy for those territories, only an agreement in this particular case to do in that way, because other things were done that were to be a compensation for it. They were allowed to come into that shape because in another way it was paid for, considering as part of that system of measures called the Compromise of 1850, which finally included half a dozen acts. It included the admission of California as a free state, which had been kept out of the Union for half a year because it had formed its own free constitution. It included a settlement on the boundary of Texas, which was undefined before, which was in itself a slavery question. For if you push the line further to the west, you made Texas larger and increased slave territory. Well, if you drew the line further to the east, you narrowed the boundary and diminished the domain of slavery, and by so much increased free territory. It included the abolition of slave trade in the District of Columbia. It included the passage of a fugitive slave law. All these things were put together, and though passed in separate measures, were nevertheless in legislation, as the speeches of the time will show, made to depend upon each other. Each got votes, with the understanding that the other measures were to pass. And by this system of compromise, in that series of measures, those two bills, the New Mexico and Utah bills, were passed. And I say for that reason that they could not be used as models based upon their own intrinsic principles. And I have the evidence of this in the fact that Judge Douglas, a year afterward, or more than a year afterward, when he first introduced bills for the purpose of framing new territories, did not attempt to follow these bills of New Mexico and Utah. And even when he introduced this Nebraska bill, I think you will find that he did not exactly follow them. But I do not wish to dwell at great length upon this branch of the discussion. My own opinion is that a thorough investigation of the matter will show most plainly that the New Mexico and Utah bills were a part of a system of compromise and not designed as patterns for future territorial legislation. And that this Nebraska bill did not follow them as a pattern at all.